Serial killers. We hear of them all the time and are always surprised at the things they've done. We often wonder how a human can take another's life. But the fact still remains, there are people out there who would kill for the thrill of it. Most serial killers also add some defining characteristic to their murders. Some have a particular thing that they leave behind at the scene of the crime, others dress themselves up in some sort of way, an example being John Wayne Gacy, who became notorious for his clown costume. Others have a signature murder weapon. One of those people, Stephen Griffiths, is known by the media as the Crossbow killer because that was his choice of weapon. Born Stephen Sean Griffiths on December 24, 1969, he was the first child. His mom was secretly a con artist and was later convicted for fraud. The couple divorced when Griffiths was only 13, leaving him and his siblings to stay with their mother, despite her criminal record. On several occasions, he was caught peeping at his mom when she was with other men. As a teenager, Stephen would shoplift whenever he felt like it. One might say that's nothing new, most teenagers shoplift at least once in their life. Now, although shoplifting is very wrong, it has become like a rite of passage. But Stephen took it to a whole new level. At the age of 17, Stephen went into a store to do what he knew how to do best, shoplift. But things didn't go as planned. The supermarket manager saw him and tried to stop him. Stephen brought out a knife and slashed him on the face. He was arrested for that and sentenced to 3 years in a juvenile detention center. While in custody, Stephen reportedly told probation officers and psychiatrists that he fantasized about being a serial killer. This should have raised red flags and he should have been kept under close supervision, but unfortunately, nothing was done about this. He was released into the society after serving his term. After his release, Stephen moved into a flat in Manningham, and enrolled in psychology at Bradford College. In 1989, he was sentenced to 100 hours of community service after an air pistol was found in his possession. He had previously used the pistol to shoot birds, which he would then dissect. Again, this is a classic serial killer behavior that should have raised some red flags, but this also went unchecked. In 1991, Stephen Griffiths was diagnosed as a schizoid psychopath. And in 1992, he was arrested again. This time, it was for holding a knife to a girl's throat, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison for it. Sometime after he was released from prison, he ramped up his interest in serial killers. He began collecting many books about his favorite murders. His goal was to carry out an in-depth study of the murders. A personal favorite of his was Peter Sutcliffe, the so-called Yorkshire Ripper, who was convicted of the murder of 13 women, most of them sex workers. He also focused on Jack the Ripper, the Moors murderers, and the acid bath murderer. In 1998, Stephen Griffiths began dating a woman. The relationship lasted for 2 years and ended when he invited her to his flat, and she found every single surface covered in plastic. She found it very strange, and to be honest, it was very strange. He didn't just move in, as that would have been a logical explanation. Later, he dated another woman, but they broke up due to his abusive nature. And Stephen didn't like that one bit. He stalked and harassed her for years after the split. In 2001, Stephen Griffiths started buying a bunch of pet lizards, including a 4-foot-long monitor lizard. According to his neighbors, he would walk them around on leashes and even take them to nightclubs. I don't know why nobody checked him into a psych ward at this point. One of his neighbors reported seeing him feed live rats to his pet lizards. He also began drinking heavily and took drugs. In 2003, He earned a bachelor's degree in psychology at the University of Bradford and enrolled at the same university for a PhD program in homicide studies a year later. Being unemployed gave him enough time to surf the internet. He spent time downloading violent pornography. Around that time, MySpace was all everyone talked about. Stephen, following the trends, opened a MySpace account with the username Venpariah, a figure from demonology. On his account, he quoted different criminals, and also left foreboding messages. Occasionally, he would quote fictional killers, such as Francis Dollarhide, a necrophilic serial killer and family annihilator from Thomas Harris's novel, Red Dragon. Soon, authorities decided to put him on their watch. His behavior was termed abnormal and they felt like he was going to do something really bad soon after he was seen a number of times, reading books on dismemberment. They were right. Unable to resist his urges, Stephen Griffiths soon decided it was time to commit his first murder. By this time, police had been watching him for 2 years and had already seized his hunting weapons. They had also contacted the housing association that owned the flat in which he lived, and the housing association shared the police's concerns and fitted a better CCTV system in anticipation of an incident. The night before killing one of his victims, he posted, "What will this pseudo-human do, one wonders." Poor Stephen pretended to be me, but he was only the wrapping. He knew towards the end that I supplied the inner core of iron. Hatred bound tightly in flesh. At very long last, the time has come to act out. On the 22nd of June 2009, Stephen Griffiths picked up a prostitute from the Bradford area. He decided on this area as a way of showing his respects to convicted serial killer, Peter Sutcliffe, who had killed some of his victims in that same location. The woman he decided on was 43-year-old Susan Rushworth. He took her to his flat, killed her, and then dismembered her in his bathtub. Nobody traced Susan to him. To everyone else, Susan had simply vanished. This made him think he had gotten away with it. He felt invincible and believed he was untouchable. He took a break to plan his next move. On April 26, 2010, Stephen picked up his second victim. 31-year-old Shelley Armitage was unfortunately the woman of his choice. He took her to his flat, killed her and dismembered her. The exact same thing he did to Susan. It is believed that after dismembering his victims, Stephen would cook some parts of their bodies to consume, and sometimes, ate them raw. The parts of the bodies that he didn't eat were put into garbage bags and tossed into a nearby lake. After his second murder, he became bolder. On May 21, 2010, less than a month after Shelley, Stephen Griffiths went for his third victim. This time, he chose 36-year-old Suzanne Blamires. For Suzanne, he decided to do something different. He didn't kill her immediately but instead, held her hostage for 2 days. Suzanne eventually broke free from bondage. She opened the door and ran down the hallway. Stephen came after her, his crossbow in hand, and shot her. He also stabbed her there in the hallway and she died. A CCTV camera, which had been installed in the hallway for the sole purpose of monitoring Stephen, captured the whole event. As he turned around to go back into his apartment, he noticed the CCTV camera that had captured the entire event. He casually walked past the camera and flipped his middle finger in a boastful manner. He then took her back into his apartment, and gave her the exact treatment he had given others, dismembering and eating parts of her body, and disposing the parts he couldn't eat. Soon after, caretakers of Stephen's apartment building were reviewing CCTV footages and saw the gruesome crime that had been committed. They immediately alerted the police. The police arrived at the apartment building and raided Stephen's apartment, where he was waiting calmly for them to arrest him. Inside the apartment, the police found remnants of the victims' bodies as well as photos of his victims, one of which clearly depicted the dead body of Shelley Armitage in the bathtub. Stephen Griffiths was arrested on the 24th of May 2010 and subsequently charged with killing the 3 women. Parts of Suzanne Blamires' body were found in the River Aire in Shipley, near Bradford, on the 25th of May. Other human tissue found in the same river was later established to belong to Shelley Armitage. No remains of Susan Rushworth were ever found. In court, Stephen Griffiths introduced himself as the Crossbow Cannibal, an alias that would later serve as his official serial killer nickname. He showed no remorse for the crimes he had committed and even said, "I'm a misanthropic. I don't have much time for the human race." He made his second appearance in court via video link on the 7th of June 2010, and the trial date was set for the 16th of November 2010. While in custody, Stephen attempted to commit suicide on 4 occasions. On December 21, 2010, Stephen Griffiths was convicted of all 3 murders after pleading guilty. At Leeds Crown Court the same day, Mr. Justice Openshaw sentenced him to life imprisonment with a whole life order. This means he will not become eligible for parole and is likely to spend the rest of his life in prison. While in prison, Griffiths has attempted suicide on several occasions. And in 2011, he embarked on a 2-month hunger strike, during which time he avoided contact with other people. When he was arrested and interviewed by police in 2010, Stephen Griffiths claimed to have killed a total of 5 sex workers in Bradford, suggesting there were 2 additional victims unaccounted for. However, after his conviction for the 3 murders in that year, he refused to speak to police any longer, effectively meaning he could not be investigated for further murders. Stephen Griffiths was mentally ill. But that wasn't the reason he committed those murders. He wanted his 5 minutes of fame. He adored convicted serial killers and wanted to be like them. Like the coward he is, he chose people whose disappearance wouldn't cause a stir. He killed because to him, it was an easy thing to do. He also knew the perfect place to find victims and escape undetected. The 3 women lost their lives all because a psycho decided he wanted to be famous. Thankfully, he is going to remain behind bars for life. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And please, turn on the notification bell so you get notified whenever I upload a new video.